The Snow White and the Rose Red. Snowflakes swirled down from the night sky. It was bitterly cold, but inside the little cottage at the edge of the forest, a welcoming fire glowed. Snow White and her sister Rose Red were huddled beside the fire, listening carefully. Their mother was telling them a story. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. "Who can be out on a night like this?" said the Snow White. "I will go and see," said the Rose Red. She opened the door and let out a scream. Towering over her was an enormous black bear. "Don't be afraid," said the bear softly. "I won't hurt you. I just want to warm myself a little beside the fire." Poor bear, said the mother. "Forgive my daughter. Come inside and make yourself at home." "Thank you," replied the bear. He dropped down onto all fours and shook his shaggy coat, sending snowflakes showering everywhere. Snow White watched nervously as the huge beast lumbered over and settled down on the rug. She had never seen a bear before. At the first, the two sisters kept their distance, but the bear seemed to be gentle that their fear soon fell away. Slowly, they crept close to get a better look at him. The bear lifted his head. "Why don't you sit beside me?" he murmured. Feeling bolder, they kneeled down and stroked his thick fur. The bear gave a contented growl. Gradually, the growling became a snore. Snow White and Rose Red snuggled up to him, and before long, all the three of them were fast asleep. When morning came, the bear padded into the forest, leaving a trail of giant paw prints behind him in the snow. "You will come back, won't you?" begged Snow White as they waved goodbye. "If you will have me," the bear called back over his shoulder. The next night he returned, and the night after, for many nights after that. Snow White and Rose Red looked forward to his visitor more and more. They fed him honey buns, tickled him his tummy, and played hide and seek. In return, the bear gave them rides on his back and showed them how to make a den. But this time passed, the snow melted away, a carpet of bluebells spread across the forest, and spring has arrived. "I am afraid I must go away for a while," announced the bear one morning. "Why?" cried Snow White. "Have we done something to upset you?" "Of course not," replied the bear. "I have to go and guard my treasure from the wicked dwarfs in the forest. During the winter, when the ground is frozen, they hide away in their caves. But now that it is spring here, they will come out and make mischief." Snow White and Rose Red tried to change their friend's mind, but nothing they could say would persuade him to stay. Burying their faces in his fur, they hugged him tightly. "We will miss you," they said. "I will miss you too," said the bear tenderly, "but I will be back as soon as I can." They opened the door and the bear slipped outside. As he did, his fur caught on the bolt and a piece tore off. The Snow White saw a flash of golden beneath, but before she could say anything, the bear had disappeared into the forest. A few days later, Snow White and Rose White went into the forest to collect some firewood. They had not gone far when they caught the sight of a strange little creeper hopping up and down in the long grass. As they got closer, they realized that it was a dwarf. He had a long white beard and angrily pink face. "Is there something wrong?" asked Rose Red. "Of course there is something wrong," he snapped. Can't you see my beard is trapped? Red Rose looked and saw that the dwarf beard was tangled up in some brambles. Oh dear, she said. How did that happen? I have got all day to stand around answering your foolish questions, he grumbled. Hurry up and set me free. The Snow White and the Rose Red gave the dwarf beard a tug, but it was no use. Wait, said Snow White, I have got an idea. She reached into her pocket and pulled up a sieving scissor. Then, with a snippety snip, she chopped off the end of his beard.
You silly goose, he hauled. Look what you have done to my lovely beard. Snow White opened her mouth to reply, but the dwarf was already busy scrambling under the bush. He pulled out a bag of gold and slung it over his shoulder. Muttering and spluttering, he stomped away. A few days later, Snow White and Rose Red went down to the river to catch some fishes for supper. Look over there, said Rose Red. It's a funny little man again. Sure enough, there was the dwarf jumping up and down among the reeds like a crazy frog. This time he had managed to get his beard caught up in his finishing line. Not you two again, he groaned when he saw you bring nothing but bad luck. After a few minutes of tug of war, the eagle finally let go and the dwarf tumbled down to the ground. Grumbling loudly, he scrambled to his feet and dusted himself down. Look at the state of my coat, he complained. Clumsy oofs, you should be more careful. Then, picking up a bag of jewels from underneath the hedge, the dwarf stormed away. Snow White looked at Rose White and they both shrugged. There's just no pleasing some people, said Rose Red. When they were on their way home later in the afternoon, Snow White and Rose Red came across the dwarf yet again. This time he was crowning down, counting something on the ground. He tried to hide it, but it was too late. Two girls stopped and stared. Scattered in front of him were thousands of diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires, all shimmering and sparkling in sunlight. What do you think you are looking at? Yelled the dwarf. He picked up a rock and was about to throw it at them when he heard a low growl behind him. A dwarf spun around and saw a huge black bear heading straight towards him. It was bringing a teeth menacingly. There was no time to run, so he had to think quickly. Please spare me, Mr. Bear, he begged. A little creature like me would hardly provide a mouthful for such a great beast. You should take these two girls instead. They would make a much tastier dinner. The bear gave an angry snort. It raised its paw and struck the dwarf with all its might. The dwarf staggered and fell to the ground, stone dead. Snow White and Rose Red turned to run away. Wait, don't be afraid, called the bear. I won't hurt you. The girls stopped in their track. His voice was familiar, filled with excitement. They turned to greet their old friend, but Bear was no longer there. In his place was a handsome young man dressed in fine robes. Who are you? Gasped Snow White. I'm a prince, he answered. The evil dwarf bewitched me and then stole all my father's treasure. For more than a year I have roamed the forest as bear. Only his death could set me free. Now at last the spell is broken. Snow White hung her head sadly. Is something wrong? Asked the prince. I thought you would be pleased for me. I am, said the Snow White. It's just that I miss our friend the bear. I am just the same inside, said the prince, and I hope I will be your friend too. Snow White smiled. You already are, she answered shyly. In fact, they became much more than friends. They fell in love, and a few years later they married in his father's palace. Since Snow White and Rose Red had always been inseparable. You won't be at all surprised to hear that she married the prince's brother, and of course, they all lived happily ever after.